We celebrate Mardi Gras every year at my house, and it's not because I have any Cajun or Creole ancestry. I don't, but I do have a lot of French Canadian and French ancestry, and they do celebrate Mardi Gras in France. It's the end of the carnival season, which is a time of celebration and eating, of course. And Mardi Gras means Fat Tuesday. It was the last day that they could indulge before Lent and the 40 days of fasting that lead up to Easter. So it was a big day of celebration and food. Happy Mardi Gras!
Happy Mardi Gras!
Okay, it's time to get our chicken ready. It's going to go into the oven. This is the dry brine chicken that's been sitting in the fridge for about 8 hours. Got a couple of pieces of the feather there. I want to get those out. So Gabriel's going to sprinkle it with our Cajun seasoning. This is a salt-free seasoning that I make and I always have on hand. He's going to sprinkle it all over. What?
May I have one more dish?
Sure. You can put them all on if you want to. All right. You ready to sprinkle it all over my chicken?
Yeah.
Now you can put this in the oven directly on a sheet pan like that, but I'm going to use the cast iron skillet because it gets very hot and retains heat. We're going to put a lot of this on, Gabriel. So just sprinkle it all, yes, all over. Keep going, lots. Okay. So this has paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, cayenne, some thyme. Like I said, there's no salt in this. That way I can control. Okay, let's get this leg too. Right here.
I wondered if that was a fraud. Fraud. But you know what? Snakes eat fraud and whole. They don't even have a chew.
They don't have to chew. They swallow them up whole. Okay, sprinkle that there. I got to turn off that timer. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to kind of massage it in a little bit. And then this is going to go into a 450-degree oven for about 45 minutes. It's going to get a super crispy skin.
Let me see your hands.
Look at my hands. And it's going to be moist and juicy inside. Okay? So, into the oven with this. Thank you, Gabriel. The next side dish I'm going to prepare is called smothered cabbage. When I was little, my great-grandmother used to make this. I just didn't know that that was what it was called. And I came across it in an article on Southern cooking. So I have 3 ham hocks, and I boiled them in water for about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes until the meat is completely cooked. And I'm now going to take it off the bone, and then we'll go on to our next step. So I got to get the rind off and then take it off the bone. So that's all the meat I got out of the ham hocks. Sometimes that's the luck of the draw when you buy them. I had 3 ham hocks and one of them had no meat in it at all. But I'm going to deal with what I have, and I'm going to chop it up pretty fine. It is cooked, but it's going to cook a little bit longer with the cabbage, so it'll actually be even more tender by the time the cabbage is done braising. And if you get any gristly parts or really big pieces of fat, you want to cut those out because the gristle, this here, is tough to chew. So I'm going to keep cutting on this and be back in a moment. I've got a skillet heating up, and I'm going to throw in a couple tablespoons of butter. Normally the ingredients for this smothered cabbage are cabbage, onions, chicken stock, and then either some ham hocks, or you can use a smoked turkey leg. And as I said earlier, the first thing to do is to cook the ham hocks for an hour and a half to 2 hours till the meat's tender. And then they tell you to strain that off and later on throw in chicken stock. Well, my great-grandma would roll over in her grave if she knew I was wasting the beautiful ham stock that was made, which is right there in that back pan. And as for the onions, I had some leftover caramelized onions from pizza night, so I don't actually have to cook these. I'm just going to soften them up a bit. And then we're going to throw in our cabbage. Okay, got those softened up, separated up a bit. In goes our cabbage. Just going to toss that to get it coated with the butter. I'm going to turn it down a little. I don't want the butter to burn. Now, if you're making a big pot of that, a lot of times people will layer the cabbage and then the ham and then the cabbage and the ham. I've just got a small head of cabbage, and as you saw, not very much meat. So I'm just going to layer the meat on top here. Kind of nestle it a little bit. And then I'm going to use some of this ham stock I made. And I don't want to cover the cabbage completely because this is a braised cabbage, which I make quite often, but not usually this style. So I'm just going to get that started with a little bit of this. I put in about a cup so far, so maybe another half cup. And then I'm going to put the lid on and let it braise. I wanted to have another vegetable. My son is not overly fond of cabbage. So I cut some carrots into thick matchsticks and I steamed them in 4 tablespoons of butter and a couple tablespoons of rum with a little bit of cayenne and a little bit of paprika in there. And then when they were basically done, I turned off the heat and I stirred in some brown sugar. So we got brown sugar and rum carrots. And at the back there, you can see the Maque Choux. And I did taste it. It needs a little more salt, and I'm going to give it just a pinch of cayenne to give it just a little bit of tingle. The cabbage is well on its way to being done. I'm going to give it a little pepper. Actually, I like quite a bit in cabbage. Cabbage really takes pepper well. And a little bit of salt. And we're going to go ahead and let that finish cooking. The cabbage is almost done. Now this is called smothered cabbage because usually it's smothered with a good bit of pork or turkey. As you saw, I didn't have a lot, but it's still going to be good. And one of the last things I'm going to do, and not all recipes call for this, but just a splash of vinegar. I'm using apple cider vinegar. So I'm just going to actually put a capful in, that's all. And it just gives it a little lift without being too tart in the cabbage. So this is just about ready to plate up. The Maque Choux is also done, so I'm going to turn off the heat. And as I said before, I'm going to stir in a couple of pats of butter, and that will just make the sauce more velvety, but it also helps the sauce to tighten up. I'm using cold butter, and you see it's melting in there pretty quickly. And now I just got to get the chicken out of the oven. It's just about done. Let it rest for 5 minutes. And then carve it, and time to eat. Here we have our rum and brown sugar carrots. And you might ask, why rum? Rum was a very important part of the economy of Louisiana in the early days. And sad to say, it was part of the slave trade, but it's the reality of the history of Louisiana. So I used rum and brown sugar and some Cajun spices. We have our smothered cabbage, and I'm going to give that the parsley. Now, even though it doesn't have a lot of meat in it, you can still see it got the smothered gravy because that reduced as I was cooking it. And then we have our Maque Choux. And I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle the bacon on that. And then I'm going to go get the chicken out of the oven, our masterpiece. Looking good. Here's our masterpiece, hot out of the oven. I'm going to transfer it to a platter, cover it with foil just to let it rest for about 5 minutes. The chicken's out of the pan, And I don't have any potatoes, but you can see there's some beautiful drippings there. So I am actually going to make a gravy. We can just put it on the chicken. I'm going to deglaze with just a little bit of sherry. And that'll help me scrape up all those bits on the bottom. It's okay, we got a few bits of chicken in there that came off the bone. That'll just add more flavor. So I'm going to add a little bit of chicken stock to this as well. And then we'll let it reduce down a bit. Okay, so I'm going to add about a cup of chicken stock or whatever I got left in here. Bring that up to a boil. I'm not going to put any salt and pepper in yet because some of the seasoning will have come off the chicken and I don't want to make this too salty, so I'll taste it before I add any salt or pepper. Set aside a little bit of the pan drippings and I'm going to make a roux to thicken up our gravy. And basically a roux is just flour and fat, about equal proportions. And I'm just going to cook this for about a minute or two. You want to make sure that you cook out that raw flour taste. And then I will stir this into our gravy. Our roux is cooked and you can see it's gotten a little darker, so I'm going to go ahead and stir this into the pan drippings and chicken stock, which have also reduced, and we will have some gravy. The gravy's thickening up. I did give it a taste. As I said, it doesn't need any salt or pepper. And I'm going to just give it a splash of cream. Let that thicken up, and we are ready to eat dinner. So there's our gravy. Now, if you do end up with lumpy gravy, people act like it's the end of the world. It's not. Strain it. As easy as that. So we have it all now, including our gravy. Time to carve. You're just going to run alongside the breastbone there. And if you do it right, you can actually get the whole breast piece off. And then I'll cut off the legs. And we are ready to eat. And you can see how juicy that chicken is. The juice has come out where I cut. This is going to be delicious. Happy Mardi Gras. Laissez les bons temps rouler.